video, I want to share with you guys my reading wrap-ups for the months of January through February. So in the months of January and February, I finished a total of 10 books. So the first book to talk about is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I truly enjoyed following the main character and her journey from naive to slightly less naive by the end. I also love how every Austen book I've read gives a really clear and decisive wrap-up on all of the concerned characters. She tells you what happens to everybody. I think that is so satisfying to read. I did like the first half of this book better when our main character Catherine travels to Bath. That was fun, just watching how this really small town country girl finds herself in this really bustling city, and everything is different and everything is new to her, and it was really fun seeing her take on the world. Yeah, I really enjoyed Northanger Abbey. I rated that a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in January was Goodbye Hello, Processing Grief and Understanding Death Through the Paranormal by Adam Berry. So Adam Berry is a paranormal investigator who is on the show called Kindred Spirits. While reading this, I was watching several episodes of the television show Kindred Spirits, and I thought it was okay. And that was a lot of my thoughts while reading this. It could be fascinating, and learning about the afterlife from the perspective of a ghost hunter did feel like it added something fresh and new. However, to me, the most interesting parts were those that detailed episodes from the TV show. And I could just get that by watching the show. I didn't feel like I really needed to read this. So not my favorite of the year, but also it wasn't bad either. Just kind of the middle to me. The next book I read was Don't Go to Sleep. This is Goosebumps book number 54 by R.L. Stine. This book is a be careful what you wish for sort of story, because the main character gets what he wants, but it actually ends up turning out horribly for him. It's a super short, 100-page children's horror book, and I thought it was good. I thought it was creepy. Okay, the next book to talk about is called Cursed Bread by Sophie Mackintosh. It's based on the true story of a town in I think it was the 50s, who all went mad, and it's suspected that they went mad from eating this poisoned bread. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. When I got to the end, I wasn't completely blown away, but there were some parts I did really like. I think this is supposed to be a weird book, but it wasn't that weird to me. It wasn't weird enough to me. It was a middle amount of weird, and I think it needed to go maybe way farther. There was no quotations at all in this book. Everything ran together, which created a kind of claustrophobic atmosphere. Hazy, non-linear storytelling, deals with obsession, kind of reminded me of Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh, of an all-consuming, possibly toxic friendship rooted in obsession. The more I think about this, the more mad I get that the main character didn't just leave her husband, the baker. Was in this time period, divorce maybe wasn't really an option. So she was kind of stuck with him. I can see that. But that's just what I kept wondering was why would she not leave this man and go find somebody who does love her if she wants intimacy so bad? Because she wasn't getting what she wanted out of their marriage. Overall, I rated that a 4 out of 5 stars. So I guess it did have some weird vibes, but I wanted to go way more. So you know what? I think I'm going to lower this one to a 3-star. Okay, the next book to talk about that I read in January or February is The World Behind the World, Consciousness, Free Will, and the Limits of Science. Okay, so this was a non-fiction book about consciousness, and there were times, this is actually a psychology book, philosophy, non-fiction, neuroscience. It's about neuroscience. I feel bad to rate this a 3-star just because I'm not smart enough for it. I'm not really the intended audience, okay? But it did get me interested in learning about consciousness more, and I just need an even more simplified version. So yeah, I was super hooked at parts of this, and I was felt like my mind was being blown a little bit, some of these concepts. But then other parts of it was so hard for me to understand. I felt like there was so much jargon and vernacular that I just did not know what he was talking about. So a 3 out of 5 stars. It was really interesting because it was about the mind, and I think that can be really fascinating. But 2/3 of it got bogged down in tricky concepts and terms. I also did see that this author wrote a fiction book which deals with similar themes of consciousness. So I would like to check that out because I think how interesting this was. I think their fiction book could be really interesting too. The next book that I read is Paradise Rot by Jenny Hval, and this one was translated as well by Marjam Idriss, a heady and hypersensual portrayal of sexual awakening and queer desire. A complex, poetic, and strange novel about bodies, sexuality, and the female gender. This book made me so sad. Oh my god, I rated it a 5-star. It is a weird fever dream book, okay? So this one is way more weird than Cursed Bread. It's a book full of urine and mushrooms. It's a really interesting examination of these characters' splintered toxic relationship, where the characters become so entangled that they begin disappearing into one another, like the broken shore constantly melding sand into sea. It's not love, but it's infatuation. It's primal, obsessive, and dark. This book was very Bunny-esque, so I would recommend you read Paradise Rot if you did love Bunny. The main character is experiencing similar symptoms of psychosis, slowly unraveling and becoming more ill as the sticky, heavy, humid atmosphere builds. Oh god, this book made me so emotions. This book is getting added to my best of 2025 list because if a book makes me feel a lot of emotions like that, if it like pierces my heart, that is like a favorite to me. That is a favorite of the year book to me. So like what I compare it to is how I felt when I read Bloom by Delilah Dawson. That book like pierced me through the heart. Paradise Rot pierced me through the heart. And so it gets a 5 stars. It gets added to my favorites of the year. But however, that list is always changing. Like if I get to December of 2025 and then I look at my list and I'm like, okay, I don't feel like Paradise Rot is a favorite of the year anymore, then I'll take it off the list. It won't be. But for right now, it's going on the list because it made me feel a lot of things. Over the course of the book, Jo starts dismissing more and more the odd to highly disturbed things that Carol does. And Jo starts to accept and enable them at the same time, to the point where she is in an abusive relationship but doesn't even realize it and can't leave it. Oh my god, that is so sad. Mushroom horror. If you like mushroom horror. Okay, also, oh my god, this is hilarious. So when I was reading this book, I was taking notes on my phone because I always take notes when I read, and I was doing talk to text in my notes app. And I was like, mushroom horror. This book has mushroom horror. And my husband heard me say that, and he's like, what is mushroom horror? Like, what are you talking about? And like, the way we talk about it, it's just such a funny concept, like mushroom horror. Like, you guys know what I mean when I say mushroom horror. My husband, who is not like somebody in the horror like space, never heard of the term mushroom horror, would have no idea what that means. So it's kind of funny to just like imagine the term mushroom horror. Like, what does that even mean? You guys know what it means. Oh my god. At the end of this book, there was so much to analyze because the main character reads this poem. No, they read this story, okay? It's a story and it's like told in verse. And then there's a poem at the end of it. And then she starts having all these dreams and she's like in psychosis. And there was so much to analyze. It reminded me of this book, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. All of these books are like queer, lesbian, fever dream books. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, Paradise Rot. Oh, Bloom. That's what I was thinking of, Bloom. So Bloom, Paradise Rot, and Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. They're all like these queer, lesbian, like horror stories, and they pierce me through the heart. Every single one of them. Oh my god. I needed the last 20 pages to be like 100 pages longer. Yes, oh my god. The fairy tale of the apple. The apple has no end, just like this fairy tale. That part of the book was like, blew my mind. It was so like it was so trippy. Like the vibes were trippy trying to imagine that scene. Crazy, weird. Like, and yeah, I wanted the last 20 pages to be extended like 100 pages longer. Like it wrapped up too soon. I need more details. I need more set in the story. Like, give me more, give me something more. And it just ended. And it's like, oh my god, why? Once again, that's how I felt about Bloom, and that's how I felt about Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. These books really get to me. So that was a 5-star. You can tell I really liked it. It made me feel a lot of things. The next book I read was I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, 3rd edition, Understanding the Borderline Personality. Okay, I rated this book a full 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not diagnosed with borderline personality, okay? But I really enjoyed learning about it because I did relate to a lot of it. I really particularly enjoyed the case studies. So when it would talk about, it would get case studies of people who have borderline personality disorder and kind of talk about them. And that was the most interesting thing, like kind of all these different character case studies. This is a super niche book, okay? Like majority of people watching this are not gonna be interested in this one, but to me, it really like, it was another one that I kind of pierced me through the heart at certain times, so I really like that one. The next book that I read, oh, that is another one that I loved. Oh my god, okay, we're finally getting to the good books. The next book is another book that I super duper enjoyed. Oh my gosh, I love this one, and that is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I rated this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I love Jane Austen. She has got to be a favorite author, and I love her books so much. Dare I say it that this is my new favorite Jane Austen. I just love Fanny Price so much. I love Fanny. Oh my gosh. And there is an excellent adaptation of Mansfield Park. I will like pop it up somewhere on the screen. This adaptation is so true to the book. I love watching it. I watched it like over and over and over as I was reading this book. And it just helped me so much to get immersed in the story and actually understand what I was reading. Again, like what I said about Northanger Abbey, I love how every Jane Austen book is so perfectly happy and well wrapped up. Everything wraps up clearly and cleanly. It's so satisfying sometimes, like, to just have a really happy ending and have, like, everybody have, like, a bow, like, a perfect tied with a bow ending to their story. Like, it's so nice, you know? Like, sometimes that's a nice break in what I'm reading. The more I read of this, the more I truly admire it as a whole. I feel like there's a lot of meat to the story, scandalous drama, and intrigue amongst the characters. I really relate deeply to Fanny Price more than any other Austen character yet. That is so true. I related so much to Fanny. Like, I felt like she was me, and more than any other Jane Austen book that I've read so far. I also love Eleanor from Sense and Sensibility. The thing with Eleanor is I look up to Eleanor. Like, I want to be Eleanor, but Fanny is more who I feel like I am Fanny. It's one of those books where, like, you never want it to end. Like, it's already long, but, like, it could just be, like, even more longer because you don't want this book to end. Like, you want to read about these characters forever and ever and ever, and that is what I felt about Mansfield Park. 5 out of 5 stars. Excellent, excellent read. Maybe my favorite Jane Austen. So hard to say. It's so hard to pick. Maybe my favorite. The next book to talk about is one that I have. It's called Great Ghost by Daniel Cohen and illustrated by David Linn. Okay, this book was published in 1990. I love vintage children's horror. So like published in the 80s and the 90s, the early 2000s. Super, super fun to me. Gives me like nostalgic Goosebumps vibes, which I love. And so this is basically just a bunch of really super short ghost stories. Oh, it kind of reminds me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Because it was illustrated, it had pretty cool illustrations in there. Not as cool as Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That one is definitely superior than this book. But this book was similar. Had similar idea going. It's really short. It's only like 48 pages. Short and spooky with awesome illustrations, reminiscent of an earlier attempt at Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I enjoyed. Yeah. So this is pretty good. I rated this book a 4 out of 5 stars. And the final book that I read in January and February is Narcissus by Godfrey. I rated this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it, but I wanted more from it, you know? It is a novella, so like, just a lot of it felt like it was kind of rushed to me. It had a really creepy concept. So this book is about the main characters find this pool while they're in Greece, this pool of water that's in this cave, which is like, don't go exploring in caves, always something bad is gonna happen. So they went exploring in a cave and something bad happened. They found this pool and they looked into it, and when they seen the reflections like smiled back at them. And then they all ended up getting like haunted by this like ancient Greek god Narcissus, who is like a kind of like a demon. They have to avoid looking at their reflections or they will die if they look at their reflection. There was times where it was really hard for me to picture and understand what was going on, and I chalked that down to the writing. It's not that the writing was bad at all. It was just sometimes like I couldn't quite conceptualize what I was reading. Some of the dialogue as well, I said, was unsatisfying. It reads a bit rushed and lacks detail, but then some moments are strangely overemphasized with kind of flowery writing. Yeah, so I would rate this, if I could rate it, like a 2.5, but I just rounded it up to a 3 because it wasn't like that. I would rather round it up than round it down on Goodreads. There wasn't a moment when I was truly scared. I think that this concept could have been built up a little bit more time spent on the scenes where the main character is looking at the reflection. Yeah, like give me more of that, because that was the scariest parts and it doesn't really like go into it too much. Okay, so that is all the books that I read in January and February. I only read a total of 10 books. My reading pace is like so much, like it is slower. Okay, I think this is gonna be my slowest reading year in a few years, which I'm really happy about, to be honest. I think it is a positive sign for me to slow down my reading pace, because it means that I'm like, this is a balanced hobby for me and not something that I'm going into too strongly. I typically am a slow reader, and for me to get to like 100 books a year, I have to really like dive in really hard, and I don't want this hobby to take up that much in my life to the point where it has in the past. So I think 10 books in 2 months is a pretty good, solid number. I'm proud of that. So that is all the books to talk about in this video. If you guys have read any of these books, if you've heard about any of these books, let me know what you think down in the comments below. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.